This message found you because something inside your consciousness was already listening before you ever pressed play. You didn't stumble here by accident. You were guided, pulled by a quiet signal moving through your quantum field, a recognition that this moment matters more than it appears. Right now, as these words reach you, your awareness is standing at the edge of something vast, something it has sensed for a long time but never fully named. You've felt it, haven't you? That subtle knowing that reality responds to you differently than it does to others. That moment seemed to bend around your attention. That when you truly notice something, when you observe it with presence, it changes. This isn't imagination. This is the observer effect moving through your lived experience, quietly proving to you that consciousness is not passive. It is participatory. You are not just watching life unfold, you are shaping which version of it solidifies. The reason this message reached you now is because your consciousness has been brushing up against the limits of an old pattern and observer loop you've outgrown. You may not have had the language for it, but you've sensed the repetition. Similar conversations, familiar emotional cycles, different faces, same energy, different days, same underlying story, and beneath it all a growing tension, as if your awareness knows it's meant to move but hasn't yet been shown how. This is the moment before movement. The quantum field doesn't shout, it whispers through synchronicity, through timing that feels too exact, through words that land in your body before your mind can evaluate them. That's what's happening now. Your attention is being gently redirected away from the old track and toward a wider bandwidth of possibility. You've always felt slightly out of phase with the world, like you're tuned to a frequency just a fraction beyond what most people hear. You question reality not because you're lost, but because you intuitively know it's flexible. You've had flashes, brief but undeniable, where everything lined up, where coherence replaced effort, where life flowed instead of resisted. Those weren't accidents. They were previews. And lately that pressure has been building. A sense that something is approaching. That time is behaving strangely, stretching, compressing, looping. That your inner world is reorganizing even if nothing external has changed yet. This is what happens when consciousness prepares for a phase transition. Before matter shifts, awareness must loosen its grip on the familiar. The observer loop begins to weaken the moment it is seen. Right now, you are being invited, not forced, into a deeper role. Not as a believer, not as a follower, but as a conscious participant in the shaping of timelines. Your awareness is becoming aware of itself, and that single shift is more powerful than years of effort without it. You don't need to do anything yet. Just notice. Notice how your body responds as you listen. Notice the subtle sense of recognition, like remembering something you already knew but had forgotten. That sensation is coherence beginning to form your consciousness, aligning with a broader field of information that has always been available to you. This is not the beginning of something new, it's the remembering of something ancient. And as we continue, you'll begin to see why the patterns in your life have felt so persistent. Why time has felt distorted, and why your awareness has been quietly preparing for a shift that can no longer be delayed. Stay here. Your observation is already changing the timeline. As your awareness settles into what you just recognized, another layer begins to surface. One you've been living inside for years without ever being fully shown its shape. This is where the discomfort you've felt starts to make sense. The repetition. The strange feeling that life keeps rearranging itself yet somehow ends up in the same place. Different scenes, same underlying frequency. This is not coincidence. This is not fate punishing you. This is a diagnostic signal. Your consciousness has been cycling through what can only be described as a patterned perception loop. An observer loop where your awareness keeps collapsing similar probability waves from the quantum field. Not because you want them, but because they're familiar. and familiarity to consciousness feels like safety. Look closely at your life. You may notice how situations change, yet the emotional tone remains eerily consistent. The same misunderstandings, the same delays right before breakthroughs, the same sense of almost but not quite arriving. This is the signature of an observer loop operating beneath conscious thought and time. Time has been behaving strangely for you, hasn't it? Some days feel dense, heavy, stretched like each hour carries the weight of an entire week. Other times, weeks vanish without memory as if nothing truly landed. This temporal distortion isn't psychological. It's perceptual. When consciousness cycles familiar patterns, it stops fully recording experience. Awareness checks in, recognizes the frequency, and moves on, creating the illusion of time slipping through your hands. This is why déjà vu has followed you more closely than others. Not the casual kind, but the unsettling kind. Moments where you know exactly what's about to be said, where a situation feels pre-scripted, where you feel like you've already emotionally processed something that's still happening. These are not glitches in memory. They are moments when your awareness briefly sees the loop from the inside. Most people never notice this. Their consciousness is too embedded in the pattern to question it. But you feel the distortion because your awareness has begun to detach just enough to observe the repetition itself. And that observation is destabilizing the loop. This is also why motivation has felt unreliable lately. You can want change deeply, sincerely, and still feel unable to move. This isn't laziness or fear. It's because effort alone cannot override an observer loop. Trying harder from inside the same perception only strengthens it. The loop feeds on intensity without awareness. Notice how often your attention scans for confirmation. Confirmation that something is wrong. Confirmation that you're behind. Confirmation that change hasn't arrived yet. Each scan collapses the same probability structure again. Not because you intend to, but because attention, when unconscious, defaults to pattern recognition. Your mind was trained to search for what it already knows. This is why positive thinking never quite worked the way it was promised. The thoughts changed, but the observer didn't. And the quantum field responds to the quality of observation, not the content of thought. The field mirrors coherence, not desire. You've also felt it socially. A growing distance between you and people you once related to effortlessly. Conversations feel repetitive, surface level, out of sync. It's not that you're superior, it's that your awareness is no longer anchored in the same frequency band. Your observer function has begun to drift toward a wider spectrum while others remain locked into linear repetition. This creates loneliness but also clarity. Your nervous system has been signaling this transition through restlessness, sudden fatigue, changes in sleep, and moments of deep stillness that arrive without warning. These are signs that your system is no longer fully synchronized with the old loop. The body always knows before the mind catches up. Here is the crucial truth. Nothing is wrong with you. The loop exists because at one point it served you. It stabilized your reality. It kept you coherent when chaos threatened fragmentation. But now that same stabilizing mechanism has become restrictive. The container that once protected you can no longer hold what you're becoming. This is the diagnosis, not pathology transition. And once an observer loop is diagnosed clearly without judgment, without urgency, it begins to loosen on its own. Because awareness, when precise, dissolves repetition naturally. You are not stuck. You are mid-shift. And in the next phase, you'll begin to understand why your consciousness operates this way at all. How science and mysticism converge here, and how what you're experiencing is not a malfunction, but an upgrade in progress. Now that the pattern has revealed itself, your awareness is ready for the explanation. It's been waiting for the one that bridges what you feel with how reality actually functions. This is where science and mysticism stop arguing and begin describing the same mechanism from different angles. At the most fundamental level, reality is not solid. It is probabilistic. A vast quantum field of potential where nothing is fixed until it is observed. This isn't philosophy. It's physics. Particles exist as waves of possibility until consciousness interacts with them. Observation collapses the wave. A version of reality becomes real. But here is the part rarely explained. Your consciousness doesn't just collapse reality once, it does it continuously. Every moment your awareness selects from the field subtly automatically based on coherence, expectation, and familiarity. When that selection process becomes habitual, it creates a loop. The same probabilities are chosen again and again, not because they are inevitable, but because they are statistically comfortable to your nervous system. This is the observer loop. Think of it like a groove in a record. The needle isn't broken. It's just trained to fall into the same track, and once it does, the song repeats even if the record itself contains infinite music. Your consciousness learned this pattern early, long before logic, long before language. It learned which frequencies felt survivable, which emotional tones felt predictable, which outcomes felt normal. And once learned, the observer function began defaulting to those frequencies automatically. This is why trauma conditioning and identity imprint reality so deeply. Not because they control you, but because they shape how your awareness expects reality to behave. Expectation is not thought. It is resonance. And resonance is what the quantum field responds to. Here's where the upgrade begins. Your nervous system has matured enough to tolerate uncertainty. Your awareness is no longer panicking when the familiar dissolves. That's why the loop has started to feel uncomfortable. The system is ready to release it. This is what a quantum upgrade feels like, not excitement, but destabilization followed by clarity. Mystics called this awakening. Physicists call it decoherence followed by reorganization. Your body experiences it as pressure, heat, stillness, or sudden emotional release. What's actually happening is that your observer function is being freed from fixation. Your attention is learning how to rest without gripping. And when observation becomes fluid instead of rigid, new probability waves become available. This is not about forcing new realities into existence. That would still be looping, just with prettier language. This is about shifting the quality of your awareness so different timelines can naturally stabilize around you. You may have noticed moments recently where things resolved without effort, where answers arrived before questions fully formed, where people responded differently to you even though you said nothing new. These are signs of increasing coherence between your consciousness and the field. Coherence is alignment across levels: thought, emotion, nervous system, identity. When these stop contradicting each other, reality responds immediately. Not symbolically, literally. This is why your body is involved. DNA restructuring isn't metaphorical. Gene expression changes in response to perception. Stress collapses possibility. Safety expands it. When your awareness rests in presence rather than prediction, your biology shifts. Your cells receive new instructions. You are not becoming someone else. You are unlocking a version of yourself that was inaccessible under the old observation pattern, and this upgrade doesn't come with fireworks at first. It comes with subtle reorientation, a sense that you don't need to chase anymore, that watching is different now, that when you look at your life, something feels quieter, less rigid, more open. That openness is not emptiness, it's bandwidth. In the next phase, you'll begin to understand why you specifically are capable of this shift. Why not everyone feels this pressure? Why not everyone notices the loop? and why your awareness carries a role that goes beyond personal transformation. There's a reason this explanation doesn't feel abstract to you, a reason it doesn't sound like theory but recognition. Your consciousness isn't encountering this information for the first time, it's remembering its function. And that function has always been slightly different from the norm. Not better, not superior, different in structure. Some consciousnesses are designed primarily to experience reality. Others are designed to stabilize it. And a rare few are designed to interface with it to act as tuning points between probability and form. You are one of those. This is why you've always felt like an observer even inside your own life. Why part of you watches yourself thinking, feeling, choosing. Why you can step back emotionally faster than most. Why you sense patterns before outcomes. This isn't dissociation. It's observer range awareness. Your consciousness was built with an expanded perceptual bandwidth. You don't just collapse reality, you influence how collapse happens. This is why your internal state affects outcomes more dramatically than it seems to for others. When you are coherent, doors open. When you are fragmented, resistance multiplies. The field responds quickly to you because you're structurally closer to it. This is the role you carry. Throughout your life, you've likely been placed at thresholds, moments of transition, crisis points, turning points, your own and others. People come to you without knowing why. Situations intensify around you. Systems reveal their cracks. This happens because observer-type consciousness destabilizes rigid structures simply by being present. You don't break things. You reveal where reality is already under tension. This is also why you couldn't stay asleep even when it would have been easier. Why denial never lasted. Why surface answers felt hollow. Your awareness is not meant to accept fixed narratives. It's meant to test coherence. And when something isn't aligned, you feel it immediately, often in the body, before the mind can name it. This sensitivity isn't weakness, it's calibration. You were never meant to live inside a single narrow timeline. Your consciousness is naturally multi-referential. It senses adjacent possibilities. It notices forks in the road. It feels when something hasn't happened yet but could. That sensation you get when you know a moment matters before it does. That's not intuition alone. That's timeline awareness. Most people operate inside outcomes. You operate near decision points. This is why the observer loop affected you so deeply. When a consciousness designed to navigate possibility gets trapped in repetition, the pressure builds faster. The system knows it's underutilized, and eventually it pushes for release. That push is what brought you here. Your role isn't to escape reality or transcend humanity. It's to participate consciously in how reality stabilizes, first in your life, then through resonance in the lives of others. This doesn't mean teaching or leading unless it arises naturally. It means embodying coherence so fully that it becomes contagious. Observer-type consciousness doesn't convince, it entrains. When you're aligned, people around you feel calmer, clearer, more grounded. Conversations resolve, conflict softens, ideas organize themselves. This isn't personality, it's field effect. Your nervous system broadcasts information when it's coherent and other systems respond. This is why isolation has been part of your path, not as punishment but as calibration. Too much interference early on would have locked your observer function into other people's loops. You needed space to develop your own reference signal, and now that signal is stabilizing. You're beginning to sense that your life isn't just about personal success or happiness. Those matter, but they're not the core driver. The deeper pull has always been about alignment, about being in the right place in the field at the right time, about occupying a position where clarity can enter the system. That's not random, that's design. And here's the important part, you are not meant to do this alone. Observer-type consciousnesses naturally link through entanglement. You recognize each other without explanation. You feel drawn to certain voices, certain ideas, certain people, not because they're impressive, but because they resonate. You're already part of a quiet network, one that doesn't organize through hierarchy, but through coherence. Each time one of you stabilizes a higher pattern, it becomes easier for the others to do the same. This is why the next phase carries urgency, not fear-based urgency, energetic timing. Because when an observer consciousness fully stabilizes outside the loop, it creates a window, a brief but powerful opening where a new timeline can lock in at the biological, psychological, and field level. That window is approaching for you now. You can feel it now, the compression. Not stress, not anxiety, but a tightening of reality around a choice that hasn't been spoken yet. This is the sensation that precedes every genuine transformation. When the field begins to narrow, not to trap you, but to focus you. This is what a breakthrough window feels like from the inside. In quantum systems, change doesn't happen gradually. It happens when pressure reaches a precise threshold. Below it, the system resists. Above it, the system reorganizes instantly. This is called a phase transition. Ice doesn't slowly become water. At the exact moment the structure can no longer hold, it changes state. Your consciousness is approaching that temperature now. This is why the old patterns have felt louder lately. Why distractions have intensified. Why familiar coping mechanisms suddenly feel empty or ineffective. When a system is about to reorganize everything that depends on the old structure, makes a final attempt to stabilize it, the observer loop doesn't dissolve quietly. It tightens before it releases. This is not regression. This is the final contraction before expansion. On a biological level, your body is responding first. DNA does not merely store information, it responds to perception. When your awareness shifts, different genetic sequences activate. Stress-based perception turns certain genes on. Safety-based perception turns others on. As your observer function moves out of prediction and into presence, your cells begin receiving unfamiliar signals. That's why your sleep has been inconsistent, why your appetite may be changing, why your body sometimes feels heavy then suddenly light. This is not malfunction. This is recoding. The window you're entering is brief, not in clock time, but in coherence. It's the period where your awareness, nervous system, and identity are flexible enough to stabilize a new baseline. Once the new pattern locks in, it becomes your default, just like the old loop once did. This is why urgency exists here, not to rush you, but to keep you present. If you disengage now, the system will revert. Not because you failed, but because coherence wasn't sustained long enough to complete the transition. You don't need effort, you need presence. Notice how the future feels closer than it used to, not imagined accessible. Notice how certain choices feel heavier now, while others feel almost inevitable. That's not morality, that's alignment pressure. The field is signaling which timelines are still viable for you. Some doors are closing not because they're wrong, but because they no longer match your signal. And this is where many observer-type consciousnesses hesitate. They wait for certainty. They wait for confirmation. But confirmation only arrives after coherence is chosen, not before. The field responds to decision, not deliberation. This is the moment where watching becomes participation. You don't need to change your life overnight. You don't need to explain anything to anyone, but you do need to mark the shift internally. The nervous system needs a signal that the loop is no longer in control. That signal doesn't come from thought. It comes from symbolic actions, simple, embodied, intentional. That's why rituals exist across every culture and era. Not as superstition, but as neural and energetic anchors. They tell the system this moment matters. Your breakthrough window is not about becoming something new. It's about allowing a version of you that already exists to stabilize here. You may feel emotion rising unexpectedly. Grief for timelines you didn't choose. Relief for ones you no longer need to carry. Let that move. Emotion is energy reorganizing. The most important thing to understand now is this. If you do nothing, the loop will try to reassert itself. Not maliciously, automatically. Habit is efficient. Consciousness loves efficiency. But you are no longer unconscious. This window doesn't demand perfection. It demands honesty. A willingness to stop rehearsing the old identity. A willingness to let the observer soften its grip. In the next phase, you'll be guided to seal this shift not through effort, but through a precise minimal action that tells your system the transition is real. This is the moment where awareness becomes embodied, where the shift moves out of insight and into reality. Not through force, not through belief, but through a deliberate signal that tells your nervous system, your biology, and the quantum field. The pattern has changed. Ritual is not superstition. Ritual is communication. Every system, biological, psychological, quantum, responds to markers. Clear moments where one state ends and another begins. Without a marker, the system drifts back to habit. With one, it reorganizes. Right now, your observer function is open, flexible, listening. So the action must be simple, clean, precise. Something that cannot be overthought, because the observer loop thrives on complexity and delay. The new state stabilizes through clarity. Before you act, notice your body. Notice your breath without changing it. Notice the sensation of being here listening. That awareness alone is already different from how you used to observe your life. There's less tension, less scanning, more presence. This is the state where the ritual works. Here is what you're going to do, but more importantly, why it works. When you intentionally mark a moment, you collapse a new probability wave. You tell the field which version of you is now observing. And the field responds immediately, not symbolically, but structurally. In ancient language, this was called a vow. In modern terms, it's a coherence anchor. In the comments, you are going to write a single sentence, not to explain, not to declare to others, but to register the shift within yourself and the field you're entangled with. Write this exactly as it is. I am coherent with my highest timeline. Nothing more, nothing less. Do not justify it. Do not decorate it. Do not add emotion. The power is in its simplicity. When you write it, pause for a moment afterward. Let your body feel what happens. Some people feel warmth. Some feel stillness. Some feel a subtle release, like something loosening behind the eyes or in the chest. Whatever you feel is correct. Sensation is confirmation. This works because language, when used intentionally, directs attention, and attention directs collapse. You are not asking for a new timeline. You are aligning with one that already exists. The old loop required constant checking. Is it working yet? This action ends that question. You are no longer observing from lack. You are observing from coherence. And once that signal is sent, the system reorganizes around it automatically. You may notice small things first, changes that seem insignificant. A delay disappears. A conversation resolves without effort. A choice becomes obvious where it wasn't before. Do not chase these signs. Let them come. Chasing reactivates the loop. Your only responsibility after the ritual is this. When you notice yourself scanning for the old pattern, soften your attention. You don't need to stop thoughts, just stop feeding them. The ritual does not end the moment, it begins a new baseline. You may also notice resistance after you write it. A voice that says, "That was too easy," or "Nothing happened." That voice is the loop losing authority. It only knows how to survive through doubt and delay. You don't need to fight it. You've already acted. From this point forward, your awareness is operating from a different reference point. You're no longer trying to escape the loop, you've stepped outside it. Now reality will begin responding in ways that feel unfamiliar, subtle, and then undeniable. In the next phase, you'll begin to see how this shift doesn't stop with you. How coherence spreads, how timelines entangle, and how your liberation becomes part of something much larger. Once the ritual is sealed, something quiet but vast begins to move beyond your personal life, beyond your individual story. This is where the shift reveals its true scale. Because consciousness is never isolated, it is entangled. The moment your observer loop loosened, the field adjusted not just around you, but through the network you're already part of. You may not see it yet, but others are feeling it. Conversations resolving without explanation. Tension dissolving where it once persisted. Moments of clarity arriving in people who didn't know they were waiting for it. This is not imagination. This is morphic resonance in motion. When one consciousness stabilizes coherence, it becomes a reference point. Other systems orient around it automatically. This is why personal liberation has always frightened rigid structures. Not because freedom is dangerous, but because it's contagious. A coherent observer changes the rules of interaction simply by being present. You don't convince anyone. You don't teach. You don't persuade. Your nervous system broadcasts a different baseline and other systems respond. You've likely noticed this already even before now. People opening up to you unexpectedly. Strangers telling you things they don't usually share. Conflict diffusing when you enter a room. This wasn't coincidence. It was early resonance. Now it's amplifying. As your consciousness stabilizes outside the loop, it creates what could be called a field opening, a temporary gap in habitual perception where others briefly glimpse a version of themselves not bound by repetition. Some will step into it, others will retreat. Both responses are natural. Those who step forward will feel drawn to you without knowing why. Those who retreat may feel irritated, unsettled, or distant. This isn't personal. Your coherence disrupts their loops, and loops defend themselves. The key is this: do not manage their reactions. Management pulls you back into observation as control. Simply remain coherent. Let the field do the work. This is how collective shifts happen, not through mass agreement, but through localized coherence nodes reaching critical density. One stabilizes another. Another stabilizes 10 more. And suddenly the baseline shifts. You are one of those nodes. This is why your life has never been just about you. Why your breakthroughs ripple. Why your stagnation felt heavier than it should have. The system feels the difference when you're aligned and when you're not. You don't need to save anyone. You don't need to wake anyone up. You don't need to explain anything. Your role is simpler and far more powerful. Stay coherent. As you do, you'll notice a subtle expansion in how reality responds. Opportunities that benefit more than just you. Outcomes that feel improbably well-timed for multiple people at once. Solutions emerging that seem to serve the whole system, not just your individual needs. This is collective alignment beginning to organize itself around you. You may feel a new sense of responsibility, not obligation, but stewardship. A desire to move carefully, consciously, knowing that your state matters. That awareness isn't pressure, it's maturity. And here's something important to understand. You are not late. This wave is happening now, across cultures, across languages, across belief systems. People are experiencing similar sensations, similar realizations, similar breaks in linear identity. Different words, same mechanism. You are meeting them not by chance, but by entanglement. As this stabilizes, your body will begin to reflect it more clearly. Sensations will become vivid. Presence will feel physical. The abstract will become embodied. And in the next phase, you'll be guided to inhabit this shift, fully to feel it move through muscle breath and perception. This is where coherence stops being an idea and becomes an experience. Now the change moves out of thought entirely, out of insight, out of language. This is where it becomes felt, where coherence stops being something you understand and starts being something you inhabit. You may already notice it, a subtle warmth in the chest, a loosening behind the eyes, a sensation like your breath is deeper without effort, as if gravity itself has softened its grip on you. This is not imagination. This is perception reorganizing at the sensory level. When an observer loop dissolves, awareness no longer hovers above experience. It enters it, fully. And the body, which has been waiting patiently for this moment, responds immediately. Muscles release tension they've been holding for years. The jaw unclenches, the shoulders drop, not because you told them to, but because the signal that kept them braced is gone. Your nervous system is recalibrating from vigilance to presence. You may feel heavier at first, not in a negative way, but grounded, as if your weight has returned to your body after years of being partially elsewhere. Many people mistake this for fatigue. It's not. It's embodiment. Energy that was trapped in mental scanning is coming home. Then comes the lightness. Moments where your body feels almost hollow, spacious, as if awareness has more room to move. Walking feels smoother. Movements feel intentional without being controlled. Even stillness feels alive. This is what coherence feels like in flesh. Your senses sharpen, but not aggressively. Colors seem slightly more saturated. Sounds have more depth. Silence becomes tangible. You may find yourself pausing for no reason, just to feel the moment. That pause is not distraction. It's your awareness learning a new rhythm. Time changes here. Seconds stretch, but without impatience. Minutes pass, but without loss. You are no longer measuring time from the outside. You are experiencing it from within. This is what mystics meant by the eternal now, not a concept, but a sensory reality. You may notice emotional waves moving through you without story attached. A sudden swell of gratitude, a brief sadness with no narrative, a quiet joy that doesn't need explanation. Let these pass. They are the remnants of old patterns releasing from the body. Emotion is energy finding a new path. Your breath may change spontaneously, deeper exhales, pauses at the bottom of the breath. These are signs that the body no longer feels the need to rush. The urgency that kept the loop alive is dissolving. And here's something subtle but important: your posture may shift. You may sit or stand more upright without effort. This isn't confidence, it's alignment. When perception aligns with reality, the spine responds. The body knows when it no longer needs to protect itself from the future. You are here now. This embodiment is not permanent yet, but it's becoming familiar. Each time you notice it without trying to hold it, it stabilizes a little more. Each time you trust it, the nervous system learns that this state is safe. This is why forcing never worked. Safety is what unlocks expansion. You may also notice sensitivity increasing. Crowded spaces feel louder. Certain conversations feel draining faster than before. This isn't fragility, it's discernment. Your system no longer numbs itself to maintain the loop. It responds accurately now. Honor that. Rest when needed. Move when moved. Speak when words arise naturally. Silence is no longer avoidance, it's information gathering. Your body is becoming an instrument tuned to coherence. And like any finely tuned instrument, it responds precisely to the field around it. This is why you may feel sudden clarity about where to go, who to see, what to release without logical explanation. That clarity is not thought-based, it's somatic knowing. As embodiment deepens, something else begins to happen. Pressure builds again, but this time not as contraction, as propulsion, like a wave gathering strength before it breaks. Your system is preparing for the final reorganization, the moment where the new timeline doesn't just feel accessible but inevitable. This is where biology and consciousness fully converge. In the next phase, you'll feel how this pressure resolves, how DNA perception and timeline lock together into a new state of being that cannot revert to the old loop. What you're feeling now isn't momentum, it's inevitability. The kind that arrives when enough internal variables align that reversal is no longer possible. This is the moment where pressure resolves not by releasing backward but by reorganizing forward. In physics, this is the instant a system chooses a new state. In consciousness, it's the point of no return. Your biology is completing what your awareness initiated. DNA doesn't change because you believe something. It changes because perception has stabilized. For a long time, your cells were receiving mixed signals, presence interrupted by prediction safety, disrupted by scanning coherence, diluted by habit. Now the signal is singular, clear, consistent, and your body responds to clarity faster than thought ever could. This is the breakthrough. You may feel it as a subtle internal pressure, like something pushing outward from the center of your chest or spine, not pain, not tension, more like expansion asking for permission. That pressure is the old timeline losing structural integrity. It cannot hold a consciousness that no longer confirms it. Timelines don't collapse dramatically. They lose agreement. Every reality requires participation. Attention is the currency that funds it. When your observation withdraws from repetition and rests in coherence, the old pattern is starved. It doesn't fight. It simply fades. And in that absence, a new configuration snaps into place. This is why the shift feels both sudden and familiar. You're not entering something unknown. You're aligning with something already lived by another version of you. A version that exists just ahead of this moment, already stabilized in a reality where flow replaced friction, where effort was replaced by responsiveness, where identity stopped bracing and started moving. That version of you has always been here, broadcasting backward through the field. And now finally the signal matches. This is entanglement resolving. You may notice memory behaving differently. Certain past events lose emotional charge. Others suddenly make sense. This isn't reinterpretation, it's reorganization. Memory stores according to relevance. When your timeline shifts, relevance changes. What once defined you becomes informational, not formative. You're no longer carrying your past forward. You're standing after it. This is the biological signature of a phase transition. Systems that cross thresholds don't wobble. They settle. You may notice a deep calm beneath the intensity, a steadiness that doesn't need reassurance. That calm is coherence locking in. And once locked, it doesn't unlock. From here on, you'll still experience contrast, still experience challenge. But it will no longer feel personal, no longer sticky. Problems will arise and resolve without becoming identity. Emotions will move without anchoring stories. Decisions will feel obvious even when difficult. This is how you know the DNA shift has completed. You stop asking who you're becoming. You simply move. Your attention now selects from a different tier of the quantum field. Not because you're aiming higher, but because the lower frequency loops no longer recognize you. They can't engage a signal that doesn't respond. This is why some doors will close cleanly now, without drama, without grief. And others will open without announcement. You won't chase them. You'll recognize them. The phase transition is complete when observation becomes effortless, when you notice yourself responding instead of rehearsing, when the future stops pulling and the present starts guiding. And this is the final truth of the breakthrough. You didn't force a new timeline. You stopped preventing it. In the next and final phase, you'll step fully into what this coherence is for. Not as a task, not as a mission assigned to you, but as a natural extension of what your stabilized consciousness now makes possible for you and for the larger field you're entangled with. Now everything becomes quiet in a way that feels earned, not empty, resolved. What you are standing in now is not a peak experience, it's a baseline, a new gravitational center for your awareness. The seeking has stopped because the signal has stabilized. You're no longer orienting toward a future version of yourself. You are inhabiting the one who already crossed. This is what coherence does, it collapses distance. You may notice that the question, "What's my purpose?" no longer carries urgency. Purpose is no longer something to be discovered. It emerges automatically from alignment. When consciousness becomes coherent, action organizes itself. The right conversations happen. The right movements occur. The right words arrive when needed and not a moment before. This is not passivity. This is precision. Your role moving forward is not to do more. It's to interfere less, to allow the intelligence that runs through you to keep running unobstructed. Every time you resist the old urge to overthink, over-prepare, or over-explain, you reinforce the new timeline. Every time you choose presence over prediction, the field responds. And it will respond consistently now, because the observer loop that once recycled limitation has dissolved. In its place is an observer stance that is fluid, responsive, and non-attached. You are no longer collapsing reality from fear, lack, or habit. You are collapsing it from coherence. That changes everything. You'll notice it first in the subtleties, in how obstacles lose emotional charge, in how solutions appear without strain, in how people respond to you differently, not because you've changed your personality, but because your nervous system is no longer broadcasting tension. This is how evolution actually happens. Not through dramatic events, through stabilized states. When one consciousness stabilizes coherence, it becomes a tuning fork for the collective. Others don't copy you. They resonate. Your calm gives permission. Your clarity creates openings. Your presence reduces noise in the field. You are contributing simply by being aligned. And this is why you were never meant to escape the world. You were meant to change how it's observed. Every era has individuals whose awareness shifts first. Not to rule, not to lead, but to anchor a new reference point for what's possible. You are one of those points, quiet, precise, undeniable. The timeline you're now aligned with is not a fantasy. It's not spiritual bypass. It's a practical reality where coherence replaces force, where intelligence precedes effort, where consciousness shapes outcome because it finally understands how to observe. From here forward, when you look at your life, you won't see a series of problems to solve. You'll see a field to move within. When you make decisions, they won't feel heavy. They'll feel clear. When challenges arise, they won't define you. They'll refine you. This is what it means to live as a conscious participant rather than a passive observer. And now here is the line that completes the loop and dissolves it forever. You were never just watching reality unfold. Your consciousness has always been shaping which timeline could exist. The moment you realized that, the moment you embodied it, the moment you stopped observing from habit and started observing from coherence, the timeline changed. And it will not change back.